Hi guys, welcome back to Simply Blissful Living. This is Romi, and in today's video I'll be sharing my recipe for an organic homemade honey wheat bread. This bread is very delicious, soft, and the ingredients in there are very wholesome and nourishing. I use all organic ingredients and none of the ingredients are processed, so this bread is definitely a very healthy option. If you'd like to see the recipe for this delicious bread, please keep watching. So we're going to start off with the ingredients, starting with the wet ingredients. We're going to need 1 1/4 cup of lukewarm water, 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast, 1/4 cup of organic raw honey, 2 tablespoons of organic unrefined coconut oil, 1 teaspoon of Himalayan salt, and then for the dry ingredients we're going to need half a cup of organic old-fashioned oats, 1 cup of organic bread flour, and then 2 cups of organic whole wheat pastry flour. So we're going to use a KitchenAid stand mixer for this. You can do this in any mixer or by hand. If you do it by hand, it will take longer. So we're going to begin by proofing the yeast. So I'm going to take the water, the active dry yeast, and the honey and put it in the mixer. Give it a stir and let it sit for about 5 minutes until the yeast gets all foamy and it starts smelling yeasty. So as you can see here, the yeast mix has foamed up on top, so I'm going to start adding the rest of the ingredients. I've added the coconut oil and then I'm going to give it a quick mix, and then I'm going to add the dry ingredients, starting with the rolled oats and then both flours, and then I'm going to add the Himalayan salt on top. Once all the ingredients are in there, I'm going to start mixing the dough. I have the dough hook on my KitchenAid mixer, and I'm going to put it on between 2 and 4, going back and forth between those 2 speeds, and I'm going to knead this for about 5 minutes, and in between I'm going to scrape the bowl to ensure that all the ingredients are coming together properly. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can easily do this in a bowl. All you have to do is proof the yeast and then dump all the ingredients in the order that I showed, and then mix it all together. And once the dough starts coming together, you just have to start kneading it in the bowl for about 10 to 12 minutes. So when you finish kneading the dough, you're going to transfer it on a board here. I am dusting it with some of the flour, and then I'm going to transfer the dough on the board, and I'm actually going to knead it by hand for just about 20 seconds. After kneading the dough on the board for about 20 to 30 seconds, it becomes quite springy. So now I'm going to transfer it to an oiled bowl and cover it. So I oiled this bowl with some coconut oil, and now I'm just going to put the dough in there and let it rise for about 90 minutes. You want to make sure that this is in a warm area and it's draft free so it can rise properly. After 90 minutes, the dough has risen quite nicely. I'm going to punch it down now and then transfer it back onto the board, and I'm going to knead it again just for about 20 seconds until the dough comes together and I can form it into a loaf. You want to roll the dough out using both your hands in a cylinder shape, about the shape of the pan that you're using, so you can put it in there. What I've done here is I've lined my loaf pan with some parchment paper that helps the bread not stick, and then it also helps to get the bread out really easily. So after I have formed it into a little log, I'm going to place it in there and then let that rise for about 45 minutes to 60 minutes. I let my bread rise for about 60 minutes, and after 60 minutes you can see that the bread has risen quite beautifully. You also want to make sure that at this point you preheat your oven to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to brush the top with some organic whole milk mixed with some raw honey. I took about a tablespoon of organic whole milk and about half a teaspoon of raw honey, and I mixed it together, and then I brushed it on top of the bread. Once I've brushed the top of the bread, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of the organic oats, and I'm just going to sprinkle it on top, and this just makes the bread look prettier. And it's also the same oats that I added inside the bread, so it kind of shows that there's oats in the bread. You don't need to do this step, it's completely optional. After I've sprinkled it, I went ahead and brushed it again with some of that milk and honey mix, and this is what the bread looks like on top. So now the bread is ready to go in the oven. I went ahead and placed the bread in the preheated oven. Again, it's preheated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and I placed the bread in there for 25 minutes. You want to check the bread after 20 minutes, but it took about 25 minutes for my bread to bake. So after 25 minutes, the bread is done. I went ahead and took it out of the oven, and I placed it on a cooling rack. I took it out of the loaf pan, and I removed the parchment paper, and then I let it cool completely before I sliced into it. So quick tip to check if your bread is done on the inside, you want to go ahead and knock at the bottom of the loaf, and if it sounds hollow, it means that your bread is completely baked. So here is the beautiful loaf of bread. After it has cooled completely, you can slice into it. And if you've never made homemade bread, I highly recommend you try a slice of this the day you bake it, because it just tastes absolutely delicious. However, if you're going to use it the next day, and if you don't plan on eating it right away, do not slice into it. Just let it, just wrap it up or put it in a container. That way your bread stays moist and it doesn't dry out. You can slice this in any way you want, and any way you slice it, whatever you put on it, it's going to be delicious. You can see the texture of the bread here. It's very nice and airy, and it's not too dense, but it's not too fluffy either. It tastes amazing, and this bread is wonderful for sandwiches as well. So if you like this recipe, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you like the content on my channel, please don't forget to subscribe. And please, if you try this recipe, go ahead and tag me onto it on Instagram and let me know what you think of it. And I really hope you try this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.